Hello, good afternoon. Welcome again to another wonderful chance where we get to experience the Word of God a little bit at a time. We're going to go through here. We've been taking throughout this month, been looking at the theme of prayer. We got one of our last few sessions that is going to be here before us as we finish these things off. I'm going to go ahead and try to fix my little collar here. Because I know my wife, she's going to be on and she'll be looking and she'll be talking and she'll have something to say. So just looking all kind of ways. So let's see. Yep, add lotion on my hands. Let's see here. I'm trying to hide my t-shirt, my white t-shirt, but it don't want to be hidden. Maybe that's good enough. All right. So here we are. Once again, we're going to go through some great opportunities with experiencing this whole realm of prayer. We've been taking a look at what has been commonly known as the Lord's Prayer. We also looking at it from the realm of it being, as we like to call it, I have come accustomed to calling it the motto prayer. We're saying the model prayer because this is the model that Jesus set out in Luke chapter 11 is one of the two places you'll find it. In Luke 11, you can also find it in Matthew chapter 5. In Matthew chapter 6. In Matthew's encounter, he's teaching these things about some kingdom principles, about kingdom living. And so we see that this is where it comes in. It comes in after the disciples ask him, Lord, teach us to pray. And so when he's asked this question and when he does his teaching, these are some of the things that he lies in there when it comes down this realm of prayer. And we're going to continue on in the same vein. We're going to continue on the same manner here as we look at the last verse from Matthew's encounter, Matthew chapter 6 at verse 13. We're going to pull it right on up. We're going to put it right there at the bottom of the screen. You should be able to see it. And as soon as I put it up, I think my computer's been acting kind of slow today, but it should be showing up here now. Yep. Matthew chapter 6, verse 13 is out of the English Standard Version. I know that may read different than your NIV, the King James Version, or one of the other trusting translations of the Bible. This is just the translation I prefer to read and use. And this is what it says. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. This is this ending part of what we come to this when we think about this prayer. And there's just a few things that we want to be able to bring and show out here, as we know that there is a great thing that is being showed here about avoiding temptation. These verses, they truly do reflect. They give us insight. They give us some things that we ought to be doing, and it allows us to be able to know that we can seek God's assistance when we are trying to avoid situations, when we're trying to avoid people, when we are trying to avoid things that may cause us to move in a way that is contrary to the way that he would have us to move. It is avoiding those actions that are not aligned with the will of God. You know, that's the word that we've been looking at a lot here throughout these teaching sessions, that word align. And we want to be able to align ourselves up with the will of God. We want to line ourselves up with the word of God. We want to align ourselves up with the ways of God. And one of the ways that we can do so is by realizing that even in our prayer life, that we can go to him and ask him for help when dealing with situations, circumstances, or things that may be tempting us to move in a different way. Things when we line ourselves up, it is putting something in appropriation in with this relationship. It's lining things up. It is being situated and set in particular ways that matter, and we want to align ourselves with the will of God. And so here we see in this prayer, there is these two requests that is here. First of all, that God does not lead us in temptation. Help us, Lord, to avoid temptation. But then also, not only that, but it also is a word of deliverance. The word of deliverance. Deliverance, it just deliver us from evil. It really brings about this recognition of different challenges that may come our way and may seem to be harmful, and we need his help to overcome them. We need his help to deliver us. We need his help to rescue us. We need his help to save us. This part of God's of Jesus' example or a model in prayer, it really sets us in a place where it encourages us to seek God's guidance consistently and constantly for his guidance and his protection. It highlights these things when it comes down to dealing with temptation and needing deliverance. And just to be able to show just some of that of what it looks like, it says here, because this is kind of interesting, so to speak, because he says, and lead us not into temptation. This led me to think about, well, how does God lead us into temptation? Things that I want to be able to discuss and talk about here is what causes us to have temptations. And I'm just typing in a couple things here that's going to help us out along our journey. Like I said, my computer's just moving kind of yes, that moving just a little bit slow here. So I'm not sure what is actually going on here with my technology. But we're going to continue on moving in this vein. All right. So one of the things I've become and have become, or would say that I have learned over my years, is that first of all, a temptation only occurs when we have an appetite for it, when we have a desired interest in it, when there is something on the inside of us that desires what is available or that desires something. I always have a good appetite for some fried chicken. I always have a good appetite for some fried chicken. I like chicken gizzards, but I cannot stand liver. There is nothing in me that has an appetite for liver. But you get some good gizzards. Oh, especially when I'm on my way down south. There's that gas station on the way there that got them gizzards that melt in your mouth. And I would step right on in and have some every time I ride past that place. But I have an appetite for it. But then it not only do I have an appetite for something, it really becomes more intriguing when I'm looking at something that is available. When I'm thinking about something that is available, it means that it exists. Like I can get it, I can use it, I have it is available for me. There's a grocery store right down the street from me. They're getting ready to close. And so beforehand, it was always available. If I made it there before a certain time, that I can go there and there will have some fried, and you can smell the goodness of the fried chicken. It was available. So what was available was already an appetite for me. But then now that what was available is no longer accessible. When I think about something that's accessible, is that I'm able to reach it or easily obtain it. It means that it could be there for me to grab. Available fried chicken exists. Let me put it to you like that. Available fried chicken exists. On the go down the other way, there's a Popeyes down the way where there is fried chicken that is available. It is accessible when it becomes within my reach. When I could reach in my pocket and realize I have the monies to purchase it. But neither one of those things, whether it's available or whether it is accessible, it does not matter if there is not an appetite for it. So when we're thinking about these things of temptations, it really builds in a build in a characteristic within our own selves. James, he says it something like this: we are not tempted by anything but by when we are carried away by our own desires. And that is in James chapter 1. I'm just trying to look it up right here to be able to find the exact location for it. And starting at verse 13, it says, when tempted, no one shall say, God is tempting me, for God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and enticed. Then, after the desire have conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. Let's take a quick look at that. I have another verse of that I wanted to be able to look at, but this one is definitely a very powerful verse to want to look at here. This James chapter 1, starting at verse 30. Let's see, add, and voila, there we go. It is there with me. Let's see, because I'm covering it up. So let me see if I can move it over here. All right. So you can see the tail end of that verse. Let's see here. Let's pull it up. I'm going to do this because I don't like that. It's actually 13. So I'm just trying to do something here where I could put it all into the same page, No page break. There we go. All right. So it says when tempted. So this letting them know that temptation may come at some times, but when we are tempted, here is the one thing that no one should say that God is tempting me. And then you see this word "for" here. It allows us to be able to know that that there's a reason behind it. This is why no one already bolded. So put a underline under that. Let's see if I could find a thicker line. There we go. No one should say, what is it that I should not say? That God is tempting me. This should never, we should be cautious when we use this type of language. We should be cautioned. And so I'm gonna put it in yellow. It looks kind of funny on the screen. Maybe I won't put it in yellow. And so let's go back to black. I don't like that. There's my queen. She came up the stairs. She was calling my name earlier. I might be in trouble, y'all. The first thing she notices too is my shirt, and I talked about that severely in the beginning. I could not get it to lay down right when my white was not covered.
No, I wanted if you put some ice in the plant. That's all.
No, I have not put no ice in the plant, so it needs some ice. But anyway, and so here we go. When tempted, the opportunity when it comes, not if, but when tempted, there will be times we will be drawn. There will be an attempt to draw us away. When those things happen, when those moments come, there is no one, not one soul, should say this. So this is letting us know that there's the direction here. We should not say that God is tempting me, and here's the reason why. First of all, here's the reason that these reasons in this green right here, because God cannot be tempted by evil. He's not tempted, but he does not tempt anyone. But here, this contrasting statement right here, I'm gonna put that actually in red if I do it right. Yeah, but here is what he now he goes actually tempt us. He says he's tempted when. Here we go with another one of those when words. So we notice we've seen that when it says when tempted, but now when tempted, this is what happens. They are dragged away. What am I being dragged away from? Well, when we look at it in its totality, this is in relationship to a believer. A believer is living and walking with God. He's going in a certain direction. He is aligned with the will of God. He'll be aligned with the will of God and the ways of God and the word of God. But then there is something that pulls him away. Being dragged away is using some energy, some forcefulness, and pulling someone away from being aligned with God. But notice what does the pulling away. It is not something outside. It is not something anyone else. It says when they are dragged away by their own evil desires. And so when I just look at that here, it just lets me know and helps me to understand that when temptation comes, it does not begin with God, but it begins with us. When we see this word by right here, this is a word that some will call a manner word. If I could use easier language, it is a word that is used to describe how something is being done. This is how they are going to be drugged away, by this manner or in this way, by their own evil desires. We have desires that are evil. When we see this word evil in this context, it is just a desire that is not aligned with God's will. It's a thought or a want or something that you want to accomplish or do, but it's not aligned with God's will. But then not only is they drawn away by the evil desires, it's those same evil desires that begins to entice. It begins to lure you. It begins to seduce you. It's your desires that truly begin to give. It begins to try to bribe you. It is really where temptation is born. It says, look what happened. It says, then. So look, after your own evil desires has drawn you away, after your own desires have tempted you, have enticed you, have bribed you, have lured you away, after desire have done what it needs to do to be conceived, it gives birth to sin. So notice here, the temptation itself is not the sin, but it's given into it when it gives birth. That it has a way of giving birth to sin once it have been conceived. And when it is full born, it gives birth to death. No wonder Jesus wants his disciples to know how to pray, Lord, even and as essentially help us, Lord, when we are dealing with temptation. And so when I just see this verse, this phrase that's right here, this lead us not into temptation, it's not so much that I'm concerned that God himself is going to provide direction that is going to lead me for the purpose of being tempted to do evil, because we just learned that God does not tempt to do evil. But there are some times and some situations in my life where I may have to face some things that is going to cause temptations to come. I think one of it, we have it take place a couple of times in Jesus' ministry, at the beginning of his ministry and at the end of his ministry. But we reviewed before his prayers to God to remove this cup, but nevertheless, not my will, but thy will be done. We've talked about that, but let's look at it at the beginning. And this takes place at the beginning of John. Excuse me, not beginning of Matthew chapter 3. It says in the 13th verse, then Jesus came from Galilee to the Jordan to John to be baptized by him. John would have prevented him, saying, I need to be baptizing you. I need to be baptized by you, excuse me. And you do come to me? And do you come to me? But Jesus answered him, let it be so now, for thus it is fitting for us to fulfill all righteousness. Then he consented. And when Jesus was baptized, immediately he went up from the water. Watch what takes place here when he comes up out of the water. And behold, that's what that, and behold here, it's like, hold up and watch what's about to happen. Behold, the heavens were open to him, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and coming to rest on him. And behold, something to pay attention to here, a voice from heaven, this is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. And that's how chapter 3 ends. And the next thing in chapter 4, this is what we hear. Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. So it almost seems to know that God does not tempt us, but we see this being demonstrated. We see this taking place with Jesus here in this 4th chapter. Let's lay some little bit of ground rules here with this. Can you imagine Jesus? He just done these things. He knows the reason why he's been need to be baptized. It's not because of anything about me, but it was in order to for righteousness, a righteousness that his Father has said to be fulfilled. He does what he knows pleases his Father, and he gets this affirmation. The dove descends in a form, the Spirit descends in the form of a dove, rests upon his shoulder, and then a voice from heaven speaks and gives these affirming words. This is my Son, of whom I am not only pleased, but well pleased. Oh, it seems like after being able to find some great accomplishment. I mean, if I was writing the story, then I would say Jesus, he went and he put on a crusade that was bigger than any Billy Graham crusade. Oh, he went and preached at some of the biggest mega churches in the world. But that's not what we hear about what takes place. It says, then Jesus was led by the Spirit. If I could just drop 2 dimes and a nickel into the parking meter and park here for about 32 seconds. How do you respond to the Spirit's leading of you? We talk about what takes place after this when he's in the wilderness, the 3 times the enemy came and tried to tempt him after or sometime during his time of fasting and seeking the Lord. But I believe that this was the first temptation that he had to overcome, because us humanly, after hearing such great things, will be ready to go. But Jesus, he did not get big-headed. Jesus did not get beside himself. Jesus did not say, I know this way of how I am going to do this. But Jesus had to surrender and submit. He had to practice what this prayer is really asking us to do. I'm going to put it right there, to practice humility and submission, acknowledging our own limitations and seeking the support to be willing to do his will. Jesus, he allows himself to be led by the Spirit. And notice he goes into the wilderness, not into the tabernacle, not into the temples, not into the church, but into the wilderness. And in this wilderness, there's going to come this time of temptation, this time of tempting by the devil. And I think this is the key to it all. The temptation did not come from God. The temptation came from the devil. The God sent his Spirit that led him in the wilderness, but it was while he was in the wilderness that the enemy would use him, use those moments to try to tempt him. Why did he choose that time? I'm so glad you asked. I did not print it out, so I will not show, but if you continue to read in that 4th chapter, you'll realize that Jesus walked into a season of fasting and prayer. Fasting and prayer is a tool, is a resource. It is a way, it is a manner that God has given unto us that we can petition unto him. Fasting, it calls for us to deny something in our appetite. If we remember the words we were using earlier, a desire that the physical body needs, wants, or desires. Jesus denied his body core nutrients, food, and water throughout these 40 days as he petitioned and sought out what would his Father, the one that said he was well pleased, how would he want him to move concerning ministry. My brothers and sisters, that's a valuable thing for us to be able to realize, especially for us that has been gifted by God to work in the proclamation ministry. We are all called to work in some type of ministry. And whatever the ministry is that God has called you to work in, you ought to make sure you take some time to seek out his direction, or else you will be doing things because of what they do down the street. You will be doing things because of what the previous generation has done. You will be doing things according even to your own wants and desires. But God has commissioned us to do ministry his way. And the best way to figure out what his way is to spend time with him. Because he being led by the Spirit into this wilderness to be tempted by the devil while he is going through this time of fasting. It is also a time where he is going to be at his weakest. I've always noticed more hungry that I am, the hungrier that I am, the weaker that I am. And even though Jesus may have been physically weak, in the time of this fasting, he was so spiritually strong that he was able to deny all of these shortcuts that the enemy, that the devil wanted to use to tempt him. The temptations was to find shortcuts. The temptation, one of the temptations, they might not be in the order. One of the temptations dealt with his purpose. Jesus had a purpose to reclaim the world, to die a death for the forgiveness of sins, that the world may be reconciled unto him. So what does the devil do? He says, look, you see all these worlds. You see everything before you. I will give you all of this if you just do things my way. He attempted to tempt him by his purpose. He also tempted him according to his fleshly weaknesses. He tempted him to test the Lord. Look, I know you're hungry. And if God really, really is pleased with you, you'll be able to turn these stones into bread so that you can. They don't make no sense. God don't want you to be hungry. The enemy just have a way of being able to tempt us to try to draw us away by manners that's dealing with our purpose, and sometimes even dealing with our weaknesses. Another temptation. Oh goodness, what was the third one? The other one was when he would throw himself over. You could jump over this cliff. Surely God won't let you hurt yourself. Is that written? Ain't that in the word? That he will not let your foot be dashed upon a rock. And the devil will find ways to misuse scripture to challenge you out in the positions that you are taking. This is why it's vital and important for us to be able to know the word. Each one of Jesus' answers came strictly from the word of God. Everything he said is written in what we call the Bible previously before he said them. And so now, just thinking about that, when Jesus has this, as he's teaching his disciples to pray, he comes with these things of challenging them out that they can ask God to help to protect them from temptation, but also deliver us from evil. We're just going to recap a couple of these words. It really deals with some insight on dependence. Knowing that we need God's guidance and protection because we humans are vulnerable at times to the enemy's attack. And we need God's help. So we need to depend on him. Also, this deliverance, it recognizes that sometimes in the midst of our challenges, that seems to create dangerous circumstances that will cause harm to us, that we will need help to overcome them because we are vulnerable to certain vices in this world. It's avoiding temptations. We kind of covered this, being able to seek his assistance when trying to avoid situation that would lead us into some undesirable actions according to the standard that God has given. Also, it shall spark our awareness of challenges. we ought to be aware of ongoing struggles and the necessity of needing help along the way. And all of these things to lead us to be humble and truly submit ourselves, because we are limited individually, but we need to seek his support. I'm finished now, but briefly, a story that I've once heard that I love to tell often. I'll give you the Reader's Digest version of it. A son and his father, they was out and they were fishing, and the time was getting kind of boring for the son. And he began to move rocks, and he was building them up like in a pyramid type shape. While he was moving rocks, he got to a rock that was too heavy for him to move. He goes back to his father, and he says, "Dad, I'm trying to move this rock, but it's heavy." The father said, "Go back and try again." This goes on a couple of times, and he still can't move the rock. The father says, "You're not trying with all of your strength." The son, he gets frustrated because he knows he's been bent. I mean, his back is even hurting. He's been trying so hard. But the father says, "Son, don't get all frustrated. Sit down. I know, and listen to me. I know you haven't used all your strength for this simple reason, because I've been right here with you the whole time, and not once have you asked me for help." We do really good at being able to voice our concerns, our cries to God. But how much do we ask for his help? Lord, lead me not into temptation. Lord, deliver me from evil. How often are we struggling with moving the big rocks in our lives? We'll tell God about the difficult situations that we are in, but we'll refuse to ask him for help. And some of the times it ain't that we refuse to ask him for help, but we have been moving not knowing that we really need to ask him for help. From this point forward, you don't have no reason, but you should know that you have help from him, and he's just waiting on you to ask him for help. Will you ask him for help today? What is that area that you are struggling with? I mean, you can walk this straight and narrow with God, with every other area in your life. You've overcome addictions and you're able to walk that straight and narrow. You've overcome bad relationships and you're able to walk straight in that area. You've overcome heartbreaks and you're able to walk and stay aligned with God. You've overcome burying mama and daddy and you're still able to walk in alignment with God. You've overcome cancer and other diseases that were supposed to take you out, but you were able to walk one with God. But what is that one desire that when it manifests and shows his face can draw you away from God and entice you to a point where you begin to do things that God do not desire for you to do? What is your rock that you need God's help with moving? That's the question I want to leave you with here today. It's the question that my wife, Minister Nelson, has left for you to ponder. What is your rock? Lord, help us. This is our lesson for today. Surely may God bless you and may God keep you. That is my humble prayer for you today. Hello, I pray that today's lesson has been beneficial for you. There's always so many different ways that we can engage. First of all, that one of the things that you can do, you can make sure you hit that like button or the heart. Let us know that you are enjoying the content that is being presented here. This is a great opportunity for me to be able to see that you are enjoying this, that this is beneficial to somebody. It's not so much about counting how many likes, but that even your like is valuable and important to me. Second thing that we can do, you can share this. You can share this. You can share how many different ways you can. First of all, you can share by leaving your comments in the comment section. When you share with me your comments, your thoughts, your insights, your questions, it helps me to be able to continue to create material that meets the needs of us, God's people. But then not only that, you can take this stream and share it on your Facebook page or your other social media pages or platform. You can share it with your friends and your families. You can take something that has been spoken of or something that came to mind when you was watching this and share this and let it begin to be a conversation started with you and with others in your home or around your circle. But then not only those things, not only can you hit the like button, not only can you share, but also you can follow. Make sure you hit that follow button so that you can know whenever it is that we are presenting this content for you to be beneficial, to help you along in your Christian journey. Will you join in with me with taking this time to make sure that we are becoming better Christians and that we are looking more and more like Christ each and every day? May God bless you. May God keep you. That is my humble prayer.